Welcome one and welcome all. Thanks so much for joining me. Today I'm going to be going over my reactions to reading The Lord of the Rings all the way through for the first time. Today I'm going to be covering Fellowship of the Rings, Book 2, Chapters 3, 4, and 5. And wowza, these were some doozies. But before I get onto those, I just want to take a quick moment to recognize two members of the community. I want to say thank you to Annie68 and to Abby Davis, because the comments you guys left on the last video really got my noodle cooking. They really energized me to keep going and to move forward and make this video. So I just want to say thank you very much again. Another quick reminder to anyone who is watching this and following along, if you are doing so but you don't have a copy of the book for yourself, please consider checking out the links down in the description. Those affiliate links do really help me out. They're just an opportunity for you to be getting the things that you were wanting to get anyways, but in doing so, you give a little extra support to the channel and to these videos, so please consider doing that. And without further ado, let's jump right in. So I had a bit of a weird thing happen to me as I was reading the chapters for this video. I was reading and somehow I just completely spaced on when chapter 3 turned into chapter 4. I just completely missed it, and I was just saying to myself all along, I was like, wow, this is just a really epic chapter. It just keeps going and going, and there's so much happening in it. Now, that point was not completely without merit, but it definitely was not exactly accurate. The Ring Goes South really is a pretty expansive and impressive chapter in and of itself. It starts off where they're still in Rivendell. Elrond decides who's going to be in the Fellowship and who's not, which I did feel a little bit cheated by the way it went down here, just because we missed out on that really epic hero moment. But you have my sword, and you have my bow, and my axe. But, of course, it really just goes to show the differences between the film and the book, and how much of a masterwork the film actually is in terms of the writing and how they handle the characters and how they build the characters and work within their own confines. And I'm rambling again, as well I tend to do when I'm talking about The Lord of the Rings. So they set off and they get to a region, and it was about this time that the geeking out really went into hardcore territory. One, as I was reading this, I just was completely picturing the landscape from The Lord of the Rings Online. Just my concept of that entire region comes from that, and I was thinking about, oh, well, these are these ruins over here, that this was a big city, and this over here, this is where the Rings of Power were forged, and just picturing Sauron in his fair-faced disguise, and Celebrimbor learning in secret. And, oh, it was so good. It was so good. And here's a fun story. I actually recently found out that I work with someone who used to be a designer for The Lord of the Rings Online. How cool is that? That's so cool. It was like meeting a personal hero for the first time. It was just, we talked, and he was telling me all kinds of really interesting and cool things, like how, because they were kind of walking a fair line where they wanted to make everything accessible but also stay true to the story, they were kind of drawing from a bunch of different sources for when they were doing the art direction. So that's why we have things like, some of the landscapes look very similar to how they are depicted in the movie, but also there's a lot of detail in there that's directly from the books, and we see that with some of the character designs and so forth. But it really got me thinking, no wonder I am having such a strong connection to the imagery as I'm reading this and I'm going through all these different sources being pulled in and kind of mishmashed together, that really just kind of made it as though this is what this looks like. This is what this is. And this, note to self, I'm now stopping and thinking, if I ever go back and play The Lord of the Rings again, I want to spend more time in a region, and I want to go back and I want to see, there's all kinds of stuff that I missed when I was playing before. Like, did they put in Caradhras? And did they put in the Redhorn Gate? Do they have those areas in there? I don't even know. I was completely oblivious back when I was playing it, because I hadn't really read. And so this is all just, it's got my brain on fire. All right. So the second thing was that I was reading this and it really stuck in my brain that, hey, it's been a long time since I've been in this state. I want to keep reading well past midnight, and I want to just forsake sleep. I want to forsake all of this because I'm so lost in this book and I'm so caught up in it. And I was thinking about the last time that happened. And in fact, I thought about all the times that that's happened. The 3 times that I've been reading a book and I've been so caught up that I just want to keep reading through the night and forget how I'm going to feel the next day. But the 3 times were Half-Blood Prince, The Deathly Hallows, and Ready Player One. And in my estimation, that is some lofty company. And one more thought before I move on to the next chapter. As I've been going along, I've been having a lot of fun just looking at the differences between the characters as they're portrayed in the films and how they're portrayed in the books, who says which lines when, and so forth. It's been a lot of fun. And, just one thing that really struck me and stuck out to me was it was Gandalf who wanted to go into Moria. It wasn't Gimli just being like, hey, we'll go in, we'll have a party with my cousin Balin, everything will be great. No, Gandalf's the one who's like, yeah, we should go in there. Let's go and we'll make a weekend of it. No, and everyone else was very much against it, but he's like, no, let's do this. And speaking of Moria, there are 2 really fantastic pieces of creativity here. The Dwarven doors and the Watcher in the Water. The Dwarven doors that just show up in the moonlight. They're made of enchanted silver that are only visible when you have a full moon. Wow, that's like really, really cool concept. Like, and then the fact that on top of everything else, they're just magnificently crafted and intricately carved. It's just another layer that it kind of got my brain thinking, well, what else is there just on the periphery that your eyes just can't see in this crazy world? And then the other thing is the Watcher, which is just an incredible concept in and of itself. So the Watcher is basically an underwater spider. So Frodo accidentally steps in the black pool as they're walking along trying to go over to the doors. And it senses the vibration and presumably it comes outside from inside of the mines. It comes out into the pool, looks around, said, that looks tasty. And then all of a sudden there's this massive tentacles just flailing everywhere and assailing the company. And, what was also just particularly interesting to me was after they get into Moria and they shut the doors, this thing, it shows that it has intelligence because it doesn't just leave it at that. It takes whatever it can get its tentacles on, boulders, the trees, and it just piles it up in front of the door so that they cannot get out, which it's really fascinating. I mean, it would be one thing if it was just some mindless monster, but no, it is showing some signs of intelligence. And now we're going to get to something that I am going to talk on and on about because it is just about my all-time favorite thing from all of literature and fiction. Once they stumble into the Chamber of Mazarbul, it's like a switch goes off in my brain and I just become hyper-focused. Maybe it's because I'm just really drawn in and locked in and want to keep reading on, basically on and on throughout the night so that I am, not getting enough sleep. But maybe it's because of that. Maybe. But this time around, I feel like I'm picking up on so much more that I didn't get the first 2 times that I read the books. So I have said a number of times that I started reading The Fellowship of the Ring. I actually read The Fellowship of the Ring twice before, but I wasn't able to get past the start of the Two Towers. It's been a long time since I have read those books, so it feels like everything is new, but for whatever reason, this time it feels a little bit different, and there are things that are really sticking out to me. And what is really sticking out to me is the encounter with Durin's Bane. My picture of what a Balrog is was largely formed by the Peter Jackson films. If you were to do an image search online and look for a Balrog, what you'd be getting is a number of pictures, and mostly they are all going to be about the same. It's basically going to be a lava golem. So it's this hulking, demonic, bestial creature with wings and just horns, a gaping maw with flames shooting out. Very much bestial in nature, not really something that you look at and say, oh, that's a very intelligent creature. Maybe it's something that's more driven by instinct. But the picture that I'm getting from the book is very different. Legolas turned and set an arrow to the string, though it was a long shot for his small bow. He drew, but his hand fell, and the arrow slipped to the ground. He gave a cry of dismay and fear. 2 great trolls appeared. They bore great slabs of stone and flung them down to serve as gangways over the fire. But it was not the trolls that had filled the elf with terror. The ranks of the orcs had opened, and they crowded away, as if they themselves were afraid. Something was coming up behind them. What it was could not be seen. It was like a great shadow, in the middle of which was a dark form, of a man shape maybe, yet greater, and a power and terror seemed to be in it, and to go before it. From Tolkien's words, the picture that I'm getting is basically a giant man who is just completely black. Like, we're talking like black hole, we're talking like Vanta Black, painted head to toe, that sort of thing, surrounded by this equally black aura that is swirling, and you can just barely make out his form within this mass. And really, the only time that you can see him is when he jumps over the pit that has all the flames shooting up, and he lights on fire. So you can see, like, his mane is what lights on fire. So now you're able to see that, and it seems kind of like, you know, some flame gets in his face, and so now you can see his flaming eyes, that sort of thing. But again, what I'm mostly getting is it's this giant man who is just black and has this swirling black aura about him. But this is an intelligent being. It's something that really was very shocking to me because, again, I was thinking of this hulking beast. But no, this is almost akin to a man in terms of the intelligence, but very smart and cunning. There's the little sequence there at the very end of the Chamber of Mazarbul where Gandalf is doing a sealing spell on the door to try and keep the enemies from coming through, and the Balrog counters it, but counters it with such ferocity that it sends Gandalf flying, like falling down an entire flight of stairs, crashing into the Fellowship, which took me by surprise. I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And I also went back and I reread the passage, and it was also really something that I didn't pick up on the first time, but I picked up the second time, where this is also someone who is able to speak, and there were references over and over to a voice that could be heard above the general din of the orcs, so just commanding them and leading them forward, and that was clearly the Balrog. I was doing some poking around online after I finished the reading, and I was seeing what was being said, what kind of information there was out there. And it was very fascinating and just a nice reminder to me because, again, I was thinking in terms of this beast, but the Balrogs are Maiar, which are really, what that tells me is that they're basically at their core, they're about the same as Gandalf, who was also a Maiar. So they just took different physical forms when they came down to Middle Earth. And one of the things that I found fascinating about that as well was that the physical form of these beings is basically a manifestation of their ideas, their mind, their wishes. So largely what we're seeing and why a Balrog looks the way it does is because Morgoth corrupted them and made them these black evil creatures, which I thought was just another layer of super cool on top of everything else. So this brings up my big question for the week. When you think of the Balrogs, what do you picture? Do you picture something that's more like what you see in the video games, in the movies? Do you see something that is more like what Tolkien is describing and what I've kind of described from what he was describing? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know how you were introduced to Lord of the Rings. Was it the Peter Jackson movies? Was it the books? Was it video games? Was it maybe the animated film from back in the 1970s? I'd be interested in seeing if there is a kind of a pattern, like what you were introduced by is what you picture. I kind of imagine that is what is going to happen, but it'd be interesting to see what your experiences are. Now, I also was looking online and I was seeing a great deal of discussion about whether or not Balrogs have wings, whether they are physical or if they were figurative. So I'm just going to go on record here and I'm going to say that for me, they are two different things, the different depictions. The Peter Jackson ones, the ones that we see from the films, from the video games and so forth, clearly have physical rings. But what I'm seeing from Tolkien is it's more of a figurative thing. It's not a physical wing. It's just he's able to spread out his aura and make himself seem more grandiose. And in so, it's like he has a wingspan because he's just, his influence is spreading out beyond the physical confines, as it were. So I have to look at the two as being separate but equally valid. And it's kind of the way I have to approach Game of Thrones because there is such a discrepancy between the books and the TV show. I look at them as both being great. I look at them as both being valid, but they are two separate things based on the same ideas and the same events. So 3 additional quick hit thoughts to round us out and sign us off. First, something that I thought was really kind of cool as well was when Gandalf and Durin's Bane lock swords, the Balrog's sword is shattered and destroyed. And I thought this was notable because of the established the precedence where it's kind of this big significant event when a sword is shattered. Frodo's sword shatters when he's trying to flee the Nazgul at the Fort of Bruinen, and I saw from the movies that the Witch King shatters Gandalf's staff. It's not a sword, but it is still a weapon, and it just got me thinking about, well, what does that mean? It's both showing, hey, this is superiority in its grandest sense. I am completely dominating you. I am destroying your weapon. It's also, it puts them into a very weakened position because they aren't able to fight back. And all of these things were very fascinating to me. And the fact that Glamdring was able to shatter the Balrog's sword was just like, whoa, it was one of those whoa moments for me. Second, just a thought here is that I found that this entire chapter was just dripping with tension in the best way. It was wonderful. It kept building and building and building. And every time that we think that, we've reached like the big bad thing that could happen, the big challenge for this sequence. That cave troll... He's definitely the big bad for the area. He gets dealt with. Then the Orc Chieftain comes in. He's all bluster, and he comes in and oh no, we have to be worried about him. And then he gets dealt with. And then there's Durin's Bane, who just shows up. And it's like, when is this all going to end? You know, everything just keeps building and building. And we saw even the landscape had some elements of really building the tension very nicely. So as a for example, you know, they would basically alternate between being in a very claustrophobic space, like as they're fleeing the chamber, that passage, the stairway just seemed to me, I was just picturing this very enclosed space, is very claustrophobic in nature, and it's just, you know, this small area hewn out of the stone as that they're going through. So there was that, and then they all of a sudden they open up into these grand halls where you can barely see the other side of the room. It's a little bit crazy. It just adds to the tension and adds to just the sense of like you can't get comfortable. So I thought that was really, really cool as well. And third, I absolutely loved the word choice at the end of the conflict with the Balrog. With a terrible cry, the Balrog fell forward, and its shadow plunged down and vanished. But even as it fell, it swung its whip, and the thongs lashed and curled around the wizard's knees, dragging him to the brink. He staggered and fell, grasped vainly at the stone, and slid into the abyss. "Fly, you fools!" he cried, and was gone. Gandalf didn't fall. Gandalf is gone. The finality of it, it's just so amazing. Gandalf was gone. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope that you are continuing on with me and you're following along. Are you reading along with me? Are you reading ahead? What are you guys up to? I hope that you're having a great time, and I'll see you guys in the next video.